The fight to keep some of those dangerous drugs from even getting to the U.S. is expanding today. As things stand, packages sent from other countries via the U.S. Postal Service don't require electronic customs data. Basically, that means they don't require an explanation of what's inside or even where the package is coming from. On Capitol Hill, there is a bipartisan effort being introduced today, a bill that would change that. And joining me now is one of the senators behind that effort, Senator Rob Portman, who introduced this. It's called Synthetics, Trafficking, and Overdose Prevention Act. Senator, nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Talk about the purpose of this bill. I hadn't realized what can get through the U.S. postal system without really being checked.
Yeah. Kate, what Gabe was talking about in Louisville, unfortunately, is having an effect around the country. And I was in Dayton, Ohio yesterday where I had a similar story. But you noticed that Gabe mentioned fentanyl, not just heroin. What I'm hearing in Dayton, and I assume what Gabe will tell us in Louisville, is that what you have reported on so well over the last few years is changing, that the fentanyl is coming in, which is a synthetic form of heroin, also carfentanil and U4 and other synthetics. It's sometimes less expensive. It's far more powerful, maybe 20 to 50 times as powerful as the potent heroin that's on the streets. So it's causing more overdoses because it is so powerful. It's also causing more deaths. In Dayton, Ohio, for instance, they've had about twice as many, I learned yesterday, deaths in this first month and a half as they did on average during a month and a half last year. So
twice
it's
as
increasing.
Many. Wow.
Yeah.
And
so
Senator, talk about the bill and what it does.
Well, what's unusual about the fentanyl as compared to heroin, which tends to come overland from Mexico, fentanyl comes in the mail, and it comes mostly from China, we are told by law enforcement officials, sometimes from India. So these are chemists in laboratories in China putting this in the mail and sending it into our communities. So to keep this poison out of the communities, we're trying to come up with ways to be able to identify these packages and to stop them from coming in. And one thing we've come up with is the fact that with regard to private carriers, UPS, FedEx, and so on, they do have to have this customs data you talked about, data as to where it's coming from, what's in it, where it's going. The mail service doesn't have that. So, of course, the traffickers have used the U.S. mail system instead of these private carriers. We think if we simply put in place those kinds of restrictions, those kinds of mandates on the U.S. mail system, we would really help our law enforcement. And that's what I heard yesterday from the folks in Dayton, is that they had that information, they would be much more successful in targeting the suspicious packages and trying to keep some of this terrible poison out of our communities.
Does that sort of mean, though, that we, the U.S. Postal Service, is relying on China and India to tell us what's in those packages? Well, I mean, a cynic would say, will that really work?
Yeah, well, it will work to the extent that the package is going to the right place. In other words, if you don't say where it's going, it's not going to go there. So that helps. With regard to what's in it, you're right. You know, there's another opportunity there, I suppose, for, another count against someone who mislabels a product. But at least we'll know where it's going, or else it won't be delivered there. So it'll give our law enforcement just that additional amount of information. I've talked to Customs and Border Protection and to the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, about this. They like this bill because it will give them some more tools, as they say, in their toolbox to be able to try to keep some of these poisons out of our community. Ultimately, as you and I have talked about before, this is about reducing demand. And unfortunately, that is increasing right now, which is a more difficult problem that Congress has also to attempt to address through legislation in the last several months. But this small bill, the STOP Act, I think is very important. And it is bipartisan. Amy Klobuchar and I introduced it today. We're hoping to get it through very quickly in committee and get it to the floor and get it passed. It's also been introduced on the House side, so we have a companion bill there as well.